Okay, I applied the last bit of resin yesterday, and I'm going to actually turn it over and strip the form right now. It's always kind of an interesting process when you take the form off. My experience, you never actually get the resin to flow exactly where you intended, especially when you can't see where you're pouring. So areas like under here, we're not actually sure whether we got all the resin in. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to take off these straps, which were pretty effective in keeping the actual form against the bottom of the workpiece, and we'll see what happens. Okay, here we are again, and what we're going to do is we're going to take the tape off. It's always exciting, a little bit nerve-wracking as well. Let's see what happens. Okay, so right now you can see where it's actually not too bad. This is all dry resin here. You can see the plastic is coming off pretty nicely. Got a little bit of over spray here. Not too bad though. As well on the end. Not too bad. We could fill in that area there, as I thought we'd have to, because we only poured about this much resin anyway. So all in all, not too bad. Okay, here we are after fixing problems with the resin. So what I've done is I put in a couple more coats underneath, and as well filled in some of the larger areas here with resin last night. As someone who's been picking this up over and over again, it is fairly heavy, but it's not as heavy as you might expect for a slab that's this big and this deep. So I think the reason for that is because I kept pouring resin into some of these voids, and it just kept going in and in and in. So what I think is there's some voids, or maybe there's some insect homes in here, or maybe the wood is just extremely porous, but I do think that there's some sort of voids underneath here, which makes it a bit lighter. So the next step is to sand everything, sand this flat and smooth, and it's gonna get worse before it gets better. All of the resin is going to get somewhat scratched before I use some sandpaper as well as some buffing compound to make it shiny again. Alright, so here I am again after pouring a little bit more resin on the underside and doing some preliminary surfacing using a belt sander. Now what I've realized is that I think maybe in the time that I've been working with this project, I thought that I would be able to take off more material with the belt sander than actually could come off. So what I've done is showed you here. It's hard to see this, but you can see that there's a good amount of material that's got to come off still, and the only way to do that, because we can't send it through planer, is we got to do it on site. So we've got to use a jig that we make up as well as a router, and build a sled for it, and then basically go back and forth with the router and the sides set up square and parallel to the finished dimensions of the wood. So what I've done is I've tried to compromise by putting the wood in a certain place, so we take more off this area over here which definitely can stand it than taking areas off here. So as well, on the long dimension, we've got to take off some material in the middle to help take a wave out of it as well. And of course, it's also twisted. I don't know if you can see that, but it's actually twisted along its length. So we're going to be doing a fair amount of material removal with the router, and luckily I got this router on Kijiji for about 30 bucks. I took some rust off of it, lubed it up, fixed it, bought a bit at the Home Depot, and we'll see how it goes. So now what I'm just going to do is build the rest of the rig and the sled for the router. You can see now that I've taken a couple of passes with the router or sled that it's much flatter. You'll notice the hump in the middle is gone, as well as it's much flatter side to side. I think in the end, I calculated I took off between 3/4 of an inch and an inch of material, and it's made the board a lot flatter. So we'll be able to take off these router marks with the belt sander, and then progressively finer grades of sandpaper with the random orbital. Then we'll, after the belt sander, we'll take a look at filling some of these holes which have come up, these voids where the resin didn't penetrate, and then hopefully we'll be able to take a look at what we're going to do for a base for this table.